So welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to take on my favorite brand for 10 and 10, and it's A. Lange & Son. Now, because it's my favorite brand, I'm not sure we're going to knock it out in 10 minutes, but we're going to give it our best shot. Now, the first piece we're going to be talking about is the 1815 up-down. So Lange, back in the late 1800s, 1879, actually got a patent for a device in a pocket watch that would measure the amount of power left in the spring. It was indicated on the dial as auf for up or ob for down. Now, since this was a classic Lange complication, they actually introduced it into a wristwatch in the late 90s and have run it through the collection in the 1815 ever since. Now, the 1815s all have the classic Arabic numerals, absolutely beautiful, and the perfectly balanced second hand and up-down indicator makes it one of my favorite Lange complications. So now we're going to talk about the Lange 1. And as you can probably guess, this was the first Lange they made. Now, it had a couple of very special features. The first of which was patented in 1992, and that's the outsized date. So it's 2 discs, really big display, something that nobody had done at the time. And then on the back side, German silver, blue steel screws holding gold chatons, a hand-engraved balance cock, a big 3/4 plate. All the very classic Lange designs from the 1800 got incorporated into the first Lange and have now become just the iconic statement of what Lange is today. Now, the Lange 1 is still going strong. It's the only piece of the original 4 that is still in production. They did the 25th anniversary, a spectacular piece, so it is all time the most iconic Lange there is. And now we're going to talk about the Lange 1 Tourbillon. So now this was introduced in 2000 to mark the millennium. They wanted to make a very special piece. And they took their most classic design, the Lange 1, big date, offset hours, and now added a tourbillon at the bottom. Absolutely beautiful piece, made in very limited numbers, 250 in rose gold, 150 in platinum, has the 3-day power reserve, just an absolutely classic watch, now with the super complication of their tourbillon in super rare numbers, just a great piece, definitely a collectible Lange. We couldn't have a discussion on Lange without talking about a datograph, and today we're going to talk about the Datograph Up-Down. Now, this is the 2nd generation rose gold black dial. And what made it special was when they introduced it in 1999, nobody was making in-house chronographs. They were too complicated, they were too expensive, there wasn't a big enough market. And here comes this little brand out of Germany and goes and shows up all the big Swiss makers by making an incredibly beautiful, amazing movement. You would just flip this watch over and you can get lost in the details. And they did it all in-house. Now, fast forward to 2012, they took that same design, expanded it from 39 to 41 millimeters, added the up-down indicator, again, the most classic Lange complication, and improved the power reserve to 60 hours. Again, all in-house, all beautifully finished by hand, gorgeous watch, probably the most perfect Lange there is, certainly my favorite chronograph on the market today. Now we're going to go from the Datograph to the Datograph Perpetual. And this is one of the few Langes that actually makes me a little sad because I think it's completely underappreciated. It's everything a datograph is. Unbelievably complex movement, beautiful finishing, gorgeous chronograph. Then it adds a perpetual calendar, and Lange didn't just stop there. If you look at this watch, it's got a little nice button on the left-hand side to reset it. Now, that's great. The only problem is, I would say over my lifetime, 100 times people have called me and said, oh my God, my watch is broken. Because when I go to push that button, the dates don't move. Now, the crazy engineers at Lange realize that if you have a perpetual and a button on the side, it'd be real easy to hit it and mess up your calendar. So what they did is put in a safety measure where you need to pull out the crown, then you can hit the button. The Datograph Perpetual Calendar, super complicated, wildly underappreciated, wildly undervalued. I think it's something everybody should take a look at. So the Saxonia Annual Calendar, to me, is one of the great watches of Lange. Very traditional style. I love the big date. And an annual calendar is super useful. It keeps track of 30-day months, 31-day months. Now, it's not something we often think about for Lange, though. So when I was at Lange, I've been there 4 times, got a chance to sit down with Tony de Haas, the head of development, and we were throwing ideas about different watches, what complications they should do. And I said, we should do an equation of time. And he looked right at me and said, well, that's an Audemars complication. And I looked right back at him and said, you just made an annual calendar. Isn't that a paddock complication? Well, he told me to go do something else, and then we went out and had a beer. But it is one of the now most classic complications, even though it is kind of paddock. Lange has done an amazing execution of it, beautiful design, very useful complication, absolutely beautiful, and I know Tony's proud of it. The next piece we're going to talk about is the Richard Lange Tourbillon pour le Merite. So Lange took a tourbillon and tried to make it even more accurate by adding a Fusi chain. Now, for those of you who don't know what a Fusi chain is, I'm not surprised, but think of a little bicycle chain. It has 636 pieces, all soldered together, that gives you a constant force of power that just makes more accurate that tourbillon. So now you're taking the tourbillon cage that rotates, a Fusi chain, making it super accurate in a very big case. But now they did something else. They took the dial, and so you could see the tourbillon, made half of it disappear. Now, that seems odd, but once the watch goes past midnight, the left-hand side of the dial slides behind, so you can see a full view of the tourbillon until you need it. So back at 6 o'clock, when you come past to nighttime, the dial comes back out so you can read the time. An incredibly ingenious approach, a beautiful watch, just one of the most amazing Langes they've ever made. Now we're going to talk about the Lange Lumen collection, and specifically the Grand Lange 1 Moonphase. Lange decided they wanted to take this to the next level and make it so you could actually read their date that glows. Now, obviously the complication of this is once you change the date behind it hasn't had a chance to charge. So they invented a very complicated dial that's actually transparent but coated black that allows the UV light to charge the date disc through the dial and pop up that date so it glows like crazy. If you've never seen one of these in the dark, it's one of the coolest things you'll ever see. It is the most incredible feature because it takes a very classic design and gives it an incredibly modern take on it. They've only made a couple of hundred references, all of them super collectible, all of them amazing. So we're getting near the end, and we're going to talk about a couple of really special pieces for the last two. The first one is the Odysseus. Now, this was a piece that came out for their 25th anniversary last year. For years, collectors, dealers, people like me have been clamoring for a stainless steel sports Lange. They never did it, they said they would never do it, and then all of a sudden last year, boom, it just popped on the scene. Now, there was some strong reactions, to say the least. A lot of people did not love the design, the big day, the big date, stainless steel bracelet, blue dial. A lot of people felt like they were just pandering to the market of Nautilus and all overseas, offshores, that kind of thing. But Lange did it in their own way. They created their own special movement. It's an automatic movement, very special design made just for the case. The big day, the big date, pushers on the side to reset it. And now that we've seen it for a little over a year, year and a half, people are really starting to appreciate how special it is. It's a super rare piece. They have not produced a lot. And I think everybody would admit today it's been a raving success. And last, but certainly not least, we're going to talk about the Zeitwerk. Now, the Zeitwerk to me really embodies what Lange does great. Now, they launched the Zeitwerk in 2008, and to do it, they brought a bunch of us over to Berlin and did dinner in the dark. And when I say the dark, I mean complete pitch black for 2 to 3 hours. It was an odd night. They passed around pieces of the watch, and you had to try to figure out what it is they had invented. And when we first saw it, having a digital display on big discs with a movement that had to have a mainspring that was literally this thick to drive those discs, being able to make the changing of the time backwards, forward, watching it hit with extreme precision. It has really become one of the most iconic designs in the watch world. Everybody knows that's a Lange. It's been around now for a long time. It is still one of the most iconic, distinctive Langes ever made. I think it really set them apart for a lot of years. So that's it, 10 of my absolute favorite Langes in around 10 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing you again.